Welcome to the show. Our next guest is an internationally known keynote speaker, social media strategist, and best-selling author. Katie is the founder of the Get Social Smart Academy and has worked with many of the biggest brands in real estate. Please welcome to the show, Katie Lance. Hey, Katie, how are you doing? Thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm doing great, Beth. Thanks for having me here. I'm excited.
No problem. So we were just talking about how long we've been connected. It's been quite a while. I'm trying to teach realtors, if they come up with a repeatable system, that they can not only service their client better, but will free up time for them to spend with their family or to go after new business. So all of these strategies added up is really going to be a lot of values. When you have a listing marketing checklist, it's a game changer when you go into a listing appointment. So what tips do you usually give agents with some type of a plan going in?
Yeah, so I think having a checklist is key. I mean, I'm all about I'm just smiling because I have like a whole checklist next to me here of like my to-do list. I feel like everybody works best when you have some sort of checklist to work off of. With a listing appointment, I think it's important that you think ahead about what it is that you do. What is the special sauce that you bring to the table? And, there's a million plus realtors that are out there, but I always remind realtors like, well, nobody's going to say things how you're going to say it. So sort of thinking about your own like I said, expertise. And I think one of the best ways to do that is sort of thinking like a storyteller and sharing some of the stories that you have, as you worked with clients in the past. Instead of saying, I'm a great marketer, maybe you say something like, well, let me share you an example. Here's a client I worked with and their home was on the market for a long time. And then they called me and they switched realtors and then we did this. And there's just something about sharing a couple different stories and sort of having those in your back pocket, so to speak, I think can make a big difference. Everybody sort of learns a little bit different. Some people need to see facts and figures. Some people learn better by stories. So having a couple different things, sort of, like I said, sort of in your back pocket, I think makes a big difference. And then the other thing I would say too is having some examples of social media and marketing. I was just chatting with someone recently and there's something really powerful about being able to, take out a piece of paper and say, hey, here's an example of this ad or this is the type of marketing we do. These are the type of reels that you can expect. And especially if your client is maybe not as social media savvy or marketing savvy, just being able to show sort of in black and white what that might look like.
Absolutely. And I think, everybody, like you said, has something different to bring to the table. And, it's good to use AI as, we've been talking so much about AI and it's like having your own personal assistant. But when you're talking about AI, it's something that you can depend on to be there to help you with things. It's not there to create all of your content for you.
Right.
One thing I haven't heard a million times for you over the years is you want to be able to speak in your voice. And if you're having AI do everything for you, then you're not going to be able to do that. The more that we work with AI, the more that we learn how we can kind of train AI to speak in our voice versus, everybody else's, because, that's the difference. The difference is in the details for sure.
Absolutely.
So when we're talking about listing stories that captures buyers' attention, I think that can be important when we're thinking about marketing house after we get the listing. It's like, okay, we have the listing, what's unique about this property? So what are some of the things that you've seen that can be unique to accent about a property?
Well, I think sometimes we try to, encapsulate like every single detail of a house. And I think that there's a place for that, especially like in the property description or the MLS or a property website, but especially for video marketing or any kind of reels or TikToks that you might be doing. I think it's great to be able to kind of pick out a couple key things. We see a lot of people in our academy that'll pick out 3 key things that they really love about a listing and highlight those. And then you can kind of sort of tease it out to say, hey, if you'd like to see the rest of the home, or if you'd like a private tour, DM me or, comment, for more information. So not feeling like you have to show everything, so to speak. We're also seeing a lot of agents who are experimenting with things like Instagram Live or Facebook Live, especially right before like a broker's tour or open house. Every area has some kind of, some different rules as far as coming soons and things like that. So you want to be careful and always double check with your broker on what's allowed, what's not allowed. But it's kind of fun to be able to, again, go live, kind of take people behind the scenes. What's nice about doing a Instagram Live or Facebook Live is it doesn't have to be perfect. I know it's a little intimidating sometimes to go live, but people don't expect perfection. So it can be plan. You can, sort of thoughtfully think about, okay, I'm going to go live and I'm going to show this, this, and this, but it doesn't have to be scripted, which is kind of cool. And then also I would say Instagram stories, Facebook stories. That's a great way to kind of take people behind the scenes as you are, getting a listing ready. A lot of people don't even understand, like, well, what does staging mean, or decluttering, or just all the things that sort of go into the pre-listing process. It's a great way to kind of pre-market the home if you're allowed to do that, and also just sort of tease out, hey, these are the services I provide. This is how I help my clients stand out. And it's sort of a way to talk about real estate without talking about real estate, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, and I think, just having fun with it, I think can be so important, like have fun, get on the live, and it can be exciting when you see that countdown. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah,
You're like, hey,
exactly.
yep.
It's a
So
little nerve wracking, but yeah, it's exciting. And you can have fun with it and say, hey, I'm going to be here, from this time to this time. Like, I've got cookies, check them out, whatever. Maybe if your lender is there, give them a shout out, yeah, just have fun with it. I think sometimes we just get so stressed about we want to be professional. Obviously, we don't want to, alienate anybody, but at the same time, it's okay to smile and have fun and just loosen up a little bit, it's all good.
absolutely. Yes, absolutely. I think that's definitely key. Just seeing the difference with these lives can do to your social media, to your reach. So I think that these little things just add up to really big things, which is really great. So we were talking a little bit about pre-marketing and what that can do to your listing as well, leading up, the teaser things that we do. So what are
Mhm.
some of the things that you suggest with agents, like leading up to a listing?
I think just again, sort of taking people along the way and showing them what that looks like. I think a lot of times we just sort of take for granted. We say, "Oh, I have a listing. It's 123 Main Street. This is coming on the market," and there's just like this whole backstory of what did it take to get there, and maybe we share sort of the before and after. We share just the process of what a listing appointment is and what does that look like, depending on your relationship with the clients. Maybe sharing a little bit of their story. Hey, so and so has they've lived here 30 years. When they moved here, this is one of the things they loved about it, and they can't wait to hand off the keys. And I think that goes back to what we talked about earlier, just a little bit of storytelling. People tend to lean in a little bit more when you can say, like, okay, I've got a story for you.
Absolutely. And just hearing it brings me so much joy, like just hearing, because sometimes we forget, it's our daily, our day to day, and just thinking about, the people behind the house, I think
Yeah.
is just so important to think there's a person there. We need to take great care of them because they have lived there for 30 years. This means a lot to them.
Yeah. And I think keeping in mind your marketing is really always doing two things. It's accomplishing what you've committed to with your client in terms of like visibility and getting the property out there and getting it out there in all different formats, whether it's lives or stories or reels. But it's also, again, positioning you to everyone else is following you. Everyone else is like, oh, that's really cool that Beth does X, Y, and Z. Oftentimes, like that marketing can help you bring in other people who are interested. They may not be interested right off the bat, but they might go, oh, I like her vibe. I'm going to follow her, or follow him. And you can start to kind of nurture that relationship.
Yeah. And like who comes in there with a plan? Like, this is my marketing plan. This is what I'm promising you. I think that's a big deal when you're a home seller and you see, the value that somebody's, willing to bring to the table.
Yeah, 100%.
So the announcement strategy, we're going live here. So when we go live, what types of things do you suggest as an agent, again, to just kind of like broadcast it out to everybody? And what are some of the things maybe that we don't do when we send it out there to the world?
Well, I still think a picture's worth 1,000 words, and I feel like one of the things I've been talking about probably for like two decades now is like the power of great pictures, ideally professional photos if you have the budget. And I'm a big believer in that, whether it's a small, condo or whether it's like a multi-million-dollar home. I just think that that's the first impression are great photos. And, we are able to do a lot with photography and AI these days, which is great, but I do think it's worth it. If you're going to spend money on anything, I think you should spend the money on a great property photographer.
Mhm.
So that's number one. And I think in terms of announcement, obviously getting those great photos everywhere. Just because you have 100 photos doesn't mean you necessarily have to post all of them, all at once. And every market's different. So some homes are moving really fast. Some homes, might be on the market longer. So I think it's okay to have a little bit of a layered approach. So maybe right out of the gate, you're sharing, a couple of those beautiful photos. Again, maybe with a call to action of, hey, if you'd like to see the rest of the information or the rest of the pictures, comment below or send me a DM or contact me. And then of course, video. I think again, either if you do some sort of professional video, that's always great. A lot of agents we know work with professional videographers to do a professional home tour that goes up on all the socials and YouTube. But I still think there's a lot of power in just you also doing your own video. It could be as simple as we see a lot of agents will take their phone and they'll go through a listing and, you don't have to narrate it like we used to. We don't have to be like, and here's the living room, right? We could, go into a house and take a couple little clips. Maybe it's, a 3-second clip of the kitchen, 3-second clip of the front yard. Again, maybe some of those key features. And with some of the tools nowadays, all you have to do is take those clips, put them into Instagram, add some music. You can even do a voiceover. And that's a great video showcasing that property. So I think you need to have a little bit of a multi-layered approach. I also think email is important. Hopefully, if you built an email database or you're building your email database, that's a great opportunity to announce your listings, share where people can get more information. And so again, sort of that multi-layered approach. I think the last thing is just knowing your market. Some markets, traditional marketing still works really well. We have a lot of agents who still do a lot of, door knocking or sending out mailers. And if that works in your market, continue to do that. Don't not do that. So knowing what works, but I would say blasting it out there and not being afraid. You have to kind of be your own best promoter in a lot of ways. So those are just a few things I think make a big difference.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think what you said, like the multi-layered approach is really important. Just be where you can, but wherever you can be, just make sure it's consistent. I think that we've found how important that is, just to try to stay consistent with what we do with our plans.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, so open house and under contract strategies. I think that this is kind of like a missed thing that a lot of people really don't take advantage of, is the open house and the under contract type of marketing opportunities. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so I think that's kind of two different things in a lot of ways. I feel like with open house, again, that's a great opportunity to do an Instagram live. You could certainly do it. You could do an Instagram or Facebook live as a coming soon, or even when it's officially on the market. I feel like with an open house though, if you're going to do it, like that's a really ideal time to do it because there's like a definitive timeline, right? So let's say you get to the house an hour or two early and you are walking through and you're turning on the lights and just getting everything spruced up, that's a great time to go live, to say, hey, I'm here at 123 Main Street and come along with me. I'm going to get this house ready for open house. We're going to be live in 2 hours and I would love for you to show up. We're going to have this and that and whatever. So I think that's fun. People, love that. It's very timely. And sometimes with open houses, people don't decide until that day. They're like, oh, that's happening in an hour. Yeah, let's go check it out. Right. It's not like weeks in advance. It's often like that day. So I definitely think there's an opportunity to do either lives or again, stories where you're posting on your Instagram or Facebook stories, sort of sharing, hey, this is what's happening. Come on by to see me in the next, hour or two or whatever it might be. And then with under contract, I think similar strategies, but celebrating, hey, this is exciting. We're under contract within 7 days or 30 days or whatever it might be. And again, that could be using some of those photos that you already used for your listing photos and using some of those, maybe using a Canva template. There's some great templates that you can use where you sort of splash, hey, under contract, swipe through to see if you're curious about, what your home would look like on the market. Comment below or send me a DM. And then same thing with video, sharing, again, just kind of highlighting some of the cool things that maybe you didn't feature in the listing, but now celebrating them in that under contract. So I just think, again, there's lots of different opportunities to think about all the different stages. It's almost like an event. You go to an event and you think about the sort of pre-event marketing and then the marketing that happens at the event and then what happens after, kind of like a wedding, right? All the different things that happen. And that's how I think about it with a listing also.
Yeah. And then just like the repurposing opportunities that we have, some of the same thing, same subject, same property, but we can tweak it and do this pretty quickly and pretty easily. And just getting that repurposing stuff in play has been essential for me to just kind of keep the flow going.
Yeah, repurposing is huge. Just because you talked about a listing 2 weeks ago doesn't mean you can't take that same caption that you wrote on Instagram, copy and paste it, and just tweak it just a little bit and say, hey, updated, under contract in 14 days. This was such a great, what a great family to work with. Here's some information about the home. Hey, contact me if you're interested in other homes in the market. So yeah, I think that's another thing. We don't always have to rewrite everything. I see this with listing marketing. People are rewriting everything. Once you have a great description, and this is where AI like ChatGPT can be really helpful. Again, tweak it so it sounds more like you and not just a robot, right? But you don't have to keep rewriting and rewriting. Like that could be something that you kind of adjust for an Instagram caption. You can adjust that for a reel. You adjust it for your website. Like, we're not reinventing the wheel every single time.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And then when we're talking about post closing and client follow up, again, I think it is another missed opportunity when we're talking about those two things, and not only your current client, but throwing it out there on social media can really be important.
Yeah, and I think that's a great opportunity to just celebrate your clients. And every client's different. Some people are very private, and we want to respect that and honor that. But if someone's a little bit more, open to having their picture on, say, social media or whatnot, and a lot of people are, to be honest, I find like anywhere between like, I don't know, 70 to 80% of people are like, yeah, they're excited. They want to be celebrated. At the end of that transaction, whether you're at the closing table or you're handing them the set of keys, just asking, saying something like, hey, can I take a picture of this for you guys? Can I help celebrate this for you guys? And then just asking, hey, do you mind if I also post this over on social media? And then when you post it, thinking about the wording that you say. So it's not, oh, I sold another one today or another one in escrow. It's more of, wow, I had an opportunity to work with this great couple or this great, such and so. I can't wait to see what's next for them, and just kind of shining the light on them, I think is a really powerful thing. So yeah, that celebration at the end, I think is key. And then keeping track of when people buy or sell their homes. Like, I feel like, I mean, you and I kind of talked about this through email. Like, I feel like this is like a big missed opportunity, like celebrating house firsaries. I feel like it gets talked about, but I just don't see it a lot in the real world. And I think that's a huge missed opportunity. Again, like buying or selling a home is a huge moment in most people's lives. However, you're going to set yourself a reminder. Maybe it's just an Outlook or however you remind yourself, like call so-and-so, even if it's just a phone call, like, hey, it's been a year. How are you guys doing? Just checking in. I know you're thinking of, I remember I talked to you a while ago. You were going to paint the bathroom. How's that going? Whatever. Like just checking in with people. It's, sometimes it's just, we finish a transaction and then we're on to the next thing, but just keeping those relationships open I think are key.
Absolutely. And I've been, using those audio messages too, because I feel like, people hearing like the text is the old like voicemail or email or, whatever. I mean, the spam is real.
Yes. Yeah.
So being able to, actually hear people's voice, I think is just so important. And then, it's like there's always that fine line between being personal, hearing people's voice, but also being respectful of people's space and time.
Sure.
So we always have that. So if I send out an audio message, they can still hear my voice and know that I care about them, and let them know, little short call to action at the very end. Like, if you need anything, please reach out to me. But I'm thinking about you today. And then, keep it going. And I get great responses every time,
Yeah.
because people will send you something back. I love the personal things that I get back too, like, pictures of new children. Like, we get,
Yeah.
really personal with our clients. So that's one of the things I love.
Yeah, for sure. Love that.
Do you have a top social tip for realtors that would be like your number one thing that you would give today to all of my listeners?
My top social, there's so many. Well, I would say we talked a little bit about it earlier, but I think there's just a lot of power in showing up as your true self and showing your personality and getting on camera, whether that's, I know that's, not necessarily a new tip, but it's something that I think is even more powerful in 2025 and beyond. Is there's just more noise than ever before. And that's, when we talk about like listing marketing, you really, like I said, you've got to be your own best promoter. You just can't post at one or two places and just share a link and expect that to be enough. Like, you got to kind of blast it out there. And I would say for social media, you can't just post the same thing that, every other realtor in town is posting, right? So if you're looking at your own content, you have to ask yourself, like, would I like and comment on what I'm posting, right? And if you're bored, then possibly the people who are following you may not be the most excited either. I think that there's a big opportunity to show up, to share your insight, to share maybe a hot take or an unpopular opinion or your thoughts around something. I think that's a big movement we're seeing is not necessarily more content, but content where we hear your insight. Right? Like, anybody can tell me, oh, 5 ways to move to Maryland. But like, I want to hear, like, what would you tell your mom? Like, if she was moving, And so I think if we could do more of that, and that comes with practice, that comes with, like you're saying, sending messages one-to-one to people. Maybe it's getting more comfortable practicing one-to-one videos with people or voice messages, but just sharing more of that personal opinion. it does a lot of things. It helps educate people. It helps remind people who you are. It helps attract new people. So, and that's something you can do on any platform, wherever you want to spend time. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, like you don't have to be everywhere. Pick one or two, and be consistent, just like anything else. It's just like any marketing, you can't just knock on one door. You gotta do a lot. So consistency makes a big difference.
That is so true. When I'm scrolling and I see a face, I'm more likely to stop than
Yeah.
if I see something else or a video or this or that. So if it's actually somebody's voice, somebody's face, and they're actually talking, and there's some great things out there. There's the AI that we've talked about. There's CapCut. There's different video generating software that you can put pictures together, which are awesome. And I think it should be a great complement, but
Yeah.
it's not a replacement for who you are.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, when we're in front of a client, either like this or in person, they're going to be seeing us.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And if we never hear you and see you, like then there's a disconnect, right? Like it's not enough. It used to be with agents, you'd put your picture on everything, and that's fine. I still see that, your signs and writers and business cards. But the problem is a lot of times we have pictures that are outdated, right? Where we meet the agent and we're like, they look literally nothing like that picture that was taken 20 years ago, right? So that's another thing. Make sure you have an updated picture. It's breaking down trust, right? They feel like, even if they don't say it out loud, like there's a trust disconnect that happens there. And then second of all, we have to hear you and see you. And that's still the biggest thing that's missing from so many agents' pages and profiles. I'll often go to their page and they do have good content, but I have no idea, like, what do they sound like? What do they stand for? What are they all about? Big opportunity. And it's not too late. If someone's listening to this and they're like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, but I've been meaning to do it, just start today. Like, we all have a phone, right? We don't need all the fancy equipment. Like, done is better than perfect, as I always say. And just start today. You're not too old. It's not too late. Just do it. That's my advice.
Yeah, and I think some people too have to take a step back, because
Yeah.
when we think about our home buyers and our home sellers, and we think about our 5, 10, 20, however so many years we've been in the real estate industry, we need to stop. We need to take a step back, and we really need to think about our client and how elementary they may be in the process right now, that we really have to stop and think about what they do or do not know. Don't assume that they know all of these things that we know because we've done it so long. Sometimes we need to start at the beginning with people versus jumping, and then people get lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. The stuff where we think, gosh, how does someone not know that? They don't, because they're not living it.
We've never done this
So
before.
yeah, they've never done it before. Or the last time they did it was 20 years ago or even 10
Mhm.
years ago. Like, it's just, I think about my own process in buying and selling. And I just remember, and we bought our home 10 years ago. And I remember at the time thinking, oh, I got this. I work with realtors all the time.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, I was quickly humbled. Like, you just forget like how big of a deal it is and all the stuff you don't know. And even when everything goes right, we had a great experience, but it's like, you just forget. It's a huge deal for a lot of people,
Yeah.
just reminding people what those details are about, what that terminology is. I just think that's important.
Absolutely, because I can tell when I get a new client how they feel, and I know when they do start asking questions, a lot of times they do stop and they do hesitate, and they do feel kind of bad for asking questions. They feel unsettled, like I don't know what I'm doing, and I try to reassure them, like, that's why we're here. Ask all your questions. They're good questions. Let's keep moving, just to try to reassure them so they don't feel bad about those questions. But that's also one good reason why, we post our questions on social media, like these fun questions that we get going, which I love them. I'm so glad that you introduced me to that, because it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no problem.
Um,
Okay.
So final question. So I'm starting to ask everybody this question. And James Clear, he's one of my favorite authors. And, so I'm big into the habits and the action. So what habit and action have you learned along the way that's really helped shape who you are today?
So I think a big habit that I've incorporated in my business is setting boundaries on what I say yes to, what I say no to, and which is really hard as an entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur for a little over 12 years, and there's a lot of things along the way I've sort of learned of what I want to do, what I don't want to do. I think, anyone who's in real estate can relate to that, but I just think setting boundaries has been a big thing. I guess more specifically, I think about my time and my schedule. I have some pretty clear boundaries on sort of when I start my day, when I actually do my first call or my first appointment, my first meeting? When does my day end? And you have to have some flexibility as an entrepreneur because things come up that are unexpected, right? But if you don't set those boundaries, everyone will push them, right? Because they're not their boundaries. So if you, like for me, I typically don't do my first call until like 9 or 10 a.m. because I have other stuff that I want to work on in the morning. Again, if someone's like, hey, can you meet at 6 a.m.? I might be like, hey, thank you so much. I'm not available at that time. I'm thinking, I'm not even awake. Maybe it's 6 a.m., but how about later at 9 or 10? So I think just setting some boundaries has been key. And I would say the other quick thing I would say in addition to that is figuring out when you're going to take time off. My husband and I, every year we sit down, we look at the calendar and we plan out we meant not plan out exactly like where we're going, but like, okay, let's figure out what weeks we're going to take off, what weekends we're going to take off. Like just map out when you want to work, when you don't want to work, because life's too short. And if you don't, you'll just end up working 24/7 and then you'll get burned out, and nobody got into business for themselves to work a million hours a week. So there's no trophy at the end that's like, yay, you did it. You worked 24 hours a day. So have those boundaries. I think that's been huge.
Absolutely. No, I think that's a great answer. That's my first answer. So excited.
Good. It's a good question. That's a really great question. Yeah.
Well, Katie, thank you so much for being with me today. And thank you so much for being my mentor and all of the things that you've provided in my business and my life over the years. It's been extremely helpful. And I'm looking forward to many, many more years together.
Thank you. I really appreciate being here. And for anyone listening, would love to connect. You can find me. I'm at Katie Lance just about everywhere on the socials. So send me a DM. We'd love to connect and, hear what you think about the podcast. So thanks for having me on today. I appreciate it.
No problem. And, join the Academy, of course, because I've been Academy member for years and years and years, and it's just amazing, and it will change your life.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
No problem.